You're listening to Maximum Medicine Radio with host Doc Martin. Stay tuned in or call in. You won't want to miss what's happening next. How do you step into your maximum potential? How do you connect your spiritual drive with your physical path? Stick around as Doc Martin takes listeners on a journey through the seen and unseen, the accepted and the unbelievable. Get ready to meet the maximum you the world needs on Maximum Medicine Radio with Doc Martin now. Hi, everybody. I'm Doc Martin. You're here on Maximum Medicine Radio. Tonight's going to be wonderful. Tonight is going to be great. I'm here with my teacher, my hypnotherapy teacher, Bryn Blankinship, and she is an amazing hypnotherapist, and she specializes in past life regression and life between lives. We'll hear all about that. And she's an author, and she used to be a movie actress. What else have you been, Bryn, in your life? In your multifaceted life. And now, as soon as COVID's over, we can go visit her at her sanctuary. She has a center in Wilmington, North Carolina. Yep. Is that correct?
Yep.
But with COVID, it's hard to have classes and retreats there. I've had enough of this virus. How about you guys? Holy moly. But anyway, all of those things I've told you about Bryn are true. But the thing that captivated me the most or drew me to take her class, I trained with her, and that's how I became certified in both basic clinical hypnosis and past life regression, was that she worked with Michael Newton, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So, Bryn, do people think hypnosis is weird? Or do you have to explain it, or are they mostly excited, or what?
Most people that seek out a session are excited and they don't think it's weird. It's the people that don't really know what hypnosis is. Sometimes you have to explain it to them. And, because it's some people think it's woo-woo, right? And it's my job to take the woo-woo out of it and explain how they're going into the deeper level of the mind, bypassing that analytical mind to go deeper within, to get to the root of problems or get to the root of where patterns are created, behaviors are created. So we're going underneath to the subconscious part of the mind, and hypnosis is a way to get there.
Well, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to be hypnotized because you'll make me do something that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Like maybe you'll make me dance like a chicken on the stage in front of everybody. What's the truth in that?
Well, people do say that sometimes, and I explain to them that I'm not that kind of hypnotherapist, right? Like, I'm not going to make them dance like a chicken or bark like a dog unless that's what they want to do to begin with. But what I can do is help them bypass the conscious mind to see more clearly where the issue began. Because, the thing happened, it happened in the past, and we get past it, and the mind puts it in a protective little box to keep us safe. And years later, we might have even forgotten where the issue started, like fear of snakes or fear of spiders or fear of heights, right? 10 years later, you might have forgotten what it was. But under hypnosis, you can go back and find where that thing started and then rework it, visit it to look at it differently. And once you shift that initial event, it shifts all the other times that compounded on the initial event. So, I do get that response from people sometimes that don't know, or they're trying to be funny, or they're thinking it's stage hypnosis. And this is not stage hypnosis. That is a different thing. That's for entertainment. And this is for self-awareness or self-discovery. That's why someone would have one of these type sessions.
The thing that I also like about it, as you're talking about it, it's very much the style, maybe coming at it a different way, that I was taught in shamanic training. These are the imprints that have led you to your patterns. And so the shaman just as a hypnotherapist will go back and find where that happened and access your subconscious mind, the shaman's doing that energetically. But I find it very similar, and I find the power of it very similar. And I think when you're engaging somebody at their subconscious, you tell me, because you know this with a lot more clients than I've had, you're engaging the higher self, you're engaging their inner wise person. And when you get that higher person, that higher aspect of themselves on board, you are limitless, aren't you?
Yes. And so you're right. This is similar to that shamanic training. I've had some shamanic training too. I've had some training in various modalities. And what I did was I learned how to do hypnosis, and then I learned how to add those elements into this format, right? And so doing this work as the hypnotherapist, I'm facilitating, I'm guiding the client, but the client is doing it. They are, they're reading themselves. I'm not doing a psychic reading, although we're working in intuitive psychic space. They are doing the work themselves, where in a shamanic session, often you're doing the work, or you're tuning in a different way. So it's a really great vehicle for the client to access those deeper levels, those deeper realms within them in a conscious way, in a deliberate way to access something.
And I think what you gain, and I agree, sometimes if you're not a highly a practitioner with high integrity, you can go in there and just do stuff when you're a shamanic or an energy or Reiki worker, if you don't have the highest integrity. When you're engaging the person and their own higher self, you've got them as your ally. So the work that's done, to me, tell me what your take is on this. It has more sticking power.
It does, because it's coming through the client. And, some well-meaning people too could, some well-meaning trained practitioners could be going in and trying to do work. But if you're trying to find it for the client, it's very different than them finding it for themselves. Right. So if we were talking about fear of snakes, and something happened when you were 5 years old on a farm with your mother in a cornfield, right? And you almost stepped on a snake and you were afraid. How am I supposed to know that that's when it was? But the client can travel back through their journey of their timeline and find that time period and all the other time periods that are related to it, and then rework it, transform it, reframe it so that it's not holding them back now, or if it's fear of speaking. These are all things that I've worked with clients with. And if it's fear of speaking in public, if you have to get up and give a dissertation for your college degree, or have to speak in public as part of your job, or sometimes nurses speak to the sales reps, get the information about the equipment that they're considering buying for the medical practice, and then they have to go back and relate it to all the doctors, the team of doctors that don't have time to sit in on these meetings. They can be intimidated, they can be tongue-tied because of some of the material they're working on. And so clearing that issue with public speaking makes it easier for them to do their job now and not be held back by something that happened when they were, in elementary school or high school.
And I think, and we're going to talk about this more throughout this episode, I think also the value is when you're leading your clients back on their journey of their awareness, back on their timeline of their awareness, and they recognize that they actually land in another lifetime. The amazement and the opening of potential for people is really big, isn't it?
Yes. So when we go back to the initial event, it's not always in this lifetime. There are times where it began in a previous life, And there could be themes of several lifetimes where this particular incident was a thing that, is causing problems now. And this is the time, this is the lifetime, and this is the moment that the client can rework it and reframe it and move on from it.
Have you had people who would have told you, I'd never had a past life, I don't believe in it, but jump into another life, and then when you show them the recording, are they stunned?
So I have had people that are questioning whether they have had a past life and their issue goes back into a past life, or they actually wanted to experience a past life session, but they weren't sure if they've actually had one. And they were very surprised that they went there. But they are aware when it's happening. So they are conscious of it. It's just that afterwards, they were still kind of like really excited, surprised that that's where it went and that that's what happened.
Yeah,
Even though they wanted it, they didn't know it would happen.
I'll just share this quick point and then we'll take a break. I remember seeing a National Geographic of the eagle hunters of Mongolia on the horse, the guy in all of his robes, the eagle on his arm. And I had a whole body visceral connection. And not long after that, I had a past life regression with a woman you probably know, Lois McCluskey, one of Michael's students. And one of the past lives I ended up in was, and I said to her, geographically, it's somewhere between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. And what year was it? It was 1110. And I was basically a Mongolian eagle hunter. So, I mean, those kind of things that when it's happening, you're going, what is happening? This can't be true. But these things are coming out of your mouth that later I said, well, now I get it. Anyway, so it's really exciting that extra knowledge you get. But I want to hear about your book. I want to hear about your training with Michael Newton, but we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Hi, everybody. We're back. I'm Doc Martin, Maximum Medicine Radio. I'm here with my teacher and my friend, Bryn Blankinship. And I want Bryn to talk to you about her training with Michael Newton. Many of you have probably read, Michael Newton has since passed away, but he wrote a book, Journey of Souls and Life Between Lives. Bryn, tell us about you training with Michael, the things that you've learned. You've learned from many, you've learned from Brian, you've learned from many people.
Yes. So I was studying with Roger Wolger, who is a Jungian trained regressionist. And he was a contemporary of Michael Newton. And one of my friends, one of my colleagues said, Bryn, you need to take this class with Michael Newton. He's about to retire. I didn't know who Michael was. And I signed up for his book based on my friend's judgment that I should do this. And I started reading the book and I couldn't put it down. Destiny of Souls, Journey of Souls. Then I couldn't wait for the training. And then after the training, time passed and Michael contacted me and asked me if I would help him start the Newton Institute along with some others. And I was the membership director for many years, I think maybe 8 years. And I also was a lead instructor. So I taught all over the world. I taught all over the US. And then I began teaching my own classes. And I learned so much from Michael. He just was so down to earth. He taught me to discern. When something's coming through in a session, you don't just assume, you ask questions, you try to dissect it to get some clarification. He didn't call something a thing until it had occurred many, many times in a session, right? And if it happens one time in a session and then it comes up again, you can ask clarification from the guides and the teachers that come through to help the client to get clarification on whatever the issue is or whatever the concept is that's coming through. And then once those concepts came through enough times, that's when he began to label, and write and document. He noticed patterns. He taught me to recognize patterns. And that's what I do in the work in all of my sessions, including the past life sessions and between life sessions.
So what did you learn that Michael learned and then you learned in your experiences about, just briefly, about life between lives?
That there is a lot of activity that happens in the spiritual realm. So prior to that, I had the belief that you just go and you're kind of in this place of we melt back into the universe, into expanded consciousness as one. At some point, we do, I believe, go to that level, but there's so much more that happens before you get to that space. So there are soul groups of souls that make plans to incarnate together lifetime after lifetime to work through issues that they, are working on as a group with other groups that are working through similar things, that we call them companion groups that come in to help each other work on a theme of poverty consciousness or guilt or love, whatever that group of souls is wanting to work with at this point. Michael's put structure around the spiritual realm. He helped to identify different areas of recreation, little skill sets, soul groups, and then there's also your spirit guide, because you have your spiritual team. Along with your spirit guide, you have your soul advisory council, is what I call them. Michael Newton had a couple of different names for them. And they are the ones that help at a higher level. So you have your soul advisory council that helps with the bigger picture. They help with the planning of your lifetime that you're going to incarnate into. You have your guide or guides, you have more than one guide, that help with specialty things, but they help with the day-to-day detailed tasks. And then your soul. So with the work that I do, I call the work that I've labeled my type of between lives session, SESSOR, soul expression, spiritual regression. And it is working in that spiritual realm, but the focus is not on some of the things that Michael focused on. It's more on the soul's advancement, soul connection, soul energy, purpose, why are you here, and more about realigning with soul and an energy exchange that takes place to bring in more of that soul into your conscious awareness. So that, because when we're talking about life planning, like right now, Sharon, you and I are sitting in your office space, but our souls are sitting up there having a meeting along with our whole spiritual team that came together and said, hey, why don't you do a show with Sharon? Why don't you talk about this subject, right? And then we physically down here made it happen. We lined everything up physically on Earth. So that's what I do with clients. I help them be in touch with that team so that they can pull some things into their conscious awareness, into their life physically. I had a client recently that their guide said, true love is out there for you, but it's out there in the spiritual realm. You have to pull it down into the physical realm. Or that book that you want to write, it's out there, but you have to pull it down into this physical realm so that it can happen. And that's what we're doing with these types of sessions. That's that and some of the other techniques that I learned, I kind of blended into the work that I do to bring it all together.
So in your SESSOR, soul expression, spiritual regression, that's what you're talking about, is how to bring forth in the literal material world the most that soul is capable of expressing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And SESSOR is an acronym for an assessment. So you go into that session, you meet with your guides, You tune in at the soul level. You meet with your council of elders, your soul advisory council. All of those things come together to help you with this, to have a current life assessment. So instead of having to die and go into a life review and review the lifetime and then come back and be born again, we're able to speed up that process. And it's like living multiple lifetimes in one life, right? Because you don't have to be born again, learn how to read and write and go to school and all of that. You just kind of have a shift at this stage that you would have the session that leads you into the next phase of your work.
So basically, let me see if I can say this a different way, a little bit more, maybe a little bit more basic. You're removing the filters or helping the client remove the filters so you can download all that potential that may have had expression in multiple lives. But if you remove the filters and let them download it now, you can get a whole bigger capacity. Is that accurate?
That's a good way to express it. And, it's like, when we're young, we have the ability to tune in. And then we get older and we start learning how to go to school and stand in line and study and be more analytical, right? Our conscious mind and our personality come in. And some of those things that we were in touch with kind of get pushed aside. And if we talk about guides or spiritual things, in some cultures, you're laughed at, you're not heard, you're not listened to. So you learn to shove that down instead of be ridiculed. And so what we're doing is opening that connection up again. Like as you're working through the filter, some people call this the veil. As the veils are getting thinner, the world is changing. The world and our access to those levels is changing. And so more and more people are being drawn to this work. More and more people are drawn to have a session, or being drawn to study this work. And because there's more of a call from the general public to access these realms and move through their stuff more quickly. So this allows a person to speed up the process of self-discovery and growth, exploration, for whatever reason they would want to have a session.
And I think that's very true. I think that's the calling I had to doing this radio show, Maximum Medicine, is if people could see what they're capable of. And we'll talk about actually hypnosis helping you with a health challenge. But our evolutionary times now really call for us bringing forth our very best. And what a great way to get our best by opening up the channel to your essence and your soul, which is so much vaster than the human form you've taken in this lifetime. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When clients are experiencing, pouring their soul into the tiny fetus or the body in the womb, because sometimes we explore in the womb on the way to the past life. When they're talking about it, it's like taking that brilliant body, soul body, energetic body, and cramming it into this physical body that, that they're going to be wearing as a vehicle to maneuver on this planet. And then lining everything up so that you can communicate and still have that connection to the other realms along the way. Some people more than others, will have that connection.
Right. Well, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, Bryn, I want you to take a minute when we come back to tell people how they can be in contact with you. And then I'll ask Jacob when they edit the video if we'll put your website there across the screen. But then I also want to really talk about how a person can use hypnosis themselves, because we have so much capacity and we can shift so much, and that's what I like to hear about. So Everybody, will be back in a minute with Bryn Blankinship, and we'll hear more about hypnosis, spiritual or medical or other. And so we'll be back in a second. Hi, everybody. We're back. I'm Doc Martin, Maximum Medicine Radio, here with Bryn Blankinship. And we need to talk about in Bryn's training, what she's learned, and then the book that she wrote. And we want to talk about that because I think you guys would really love this book. Bryn, tell us all about it.
So my book, The Limitless Soul, came about because I had several chapters in other important books. So Michael Newton's book, Memories of the Afterlife, I have a chapter in there, chapter 3. Brian Weiss's book, I have a chapter in his book about one of my, and these are all case studies with clients. I have a past life session in there. And then I started pulling together case studies of my own that I put into The Limitless Soul. And these case studies I felt were representative not only of something that was beneficial for the client, but for the reader. They had universal messages in there. So I took the transcripts of the sessions and turned them into a chapter, taking out, sometimes there are long pauses in the sessions, and I took out those long pauses and just put the client's words into a format that the reader could read. And not only would they get a story, but they would get benefit by reading it. And then also at the end of each chapter, we put some exercises in there. My publisher asked me to do this, Llewellyn Publishing, so it's a book that you can read. You can read another person's experience, what they experienced in session. Sometimes it's a couple of sessions that people had with me. And then there's an exercise at the end that the reader can do. And if you go through the book and go through all of the chapters and all the exercises, it's like a repatterning that's taking place for the reader. So, before you know it, you've shifted a pattern yourself because you're putting yourself into that hypnotic state, right? You don't have to have a hypnotherapist to put you into hypnosis. The benefit of a hypnotherapist is they can help show you how to access a deeper level of hypnosis, because most people will get distracted. It's hard for them to turn off their thoughts. But if they're in a session dedicated to hypnosis, they are able to tune in for that period of time and actually go deeper. So what I hear a lot from clients is, I don't think I've ever felt this relaxed in my life. I don't think I've ever gone this deep. I meditate, but I don't always get as deep as I've been able to do here. And then for those meditators that are able to get deep enough, this is a way for me to ask questions that they didn't know to ask, right? So they bring in questions for the session, and sometimes, the benefit for someone that meditates is to have someone that is thinking from another viewpoint that can bring in additional questions to a situation that person hadn't thought of. And by doing so, we can tune into that higher space, tune into guides, the soul, and get answers that are coming from a higher consciousness, not from our earthly consciousness. And they're coming from that higher realm to provide answers that maybe we hadn't even thought of, solutions we hadn't even considered. So that's why I wrote the book. And there are really beautiful messages that came through these sessions for the client, for me sitting in on these sessions, facilitating. No two sessions are the same. I could work with the same person multiple times. It would be a different session every time. And it's a privilege for me to be able to be part of these sessions and share this journey with the client, for the client to trust me, to work with them, because we have a rapport that we're building between us, like a bridge, so that we can elevate both of our consciousnesses to a level that can connect to our guides to get those answers that we're seeking and purpose. Why are we
So
here? Find out more about why we're here.
share, if you don't mind, share some of the messages that resonated with you enough that you found to be universal.
So one of the biggest messages, we are here on purpose, for a purpose, and all souls are part of the divine plan. So that means every soul. So that soul, that person in your life might be out doing something that you judge and think is not good, right? They're wasting time. They shouldn't be spending their time that way. They're working too hard. They're not working enough. You know, that soul is doing what it's supposed to be doing until it figures out it's supposed to be doing something else. So maybe working too hard is teaching a lesson that now it can see in hindsight and now slow down and find that balance. How do they know what balance is if they don't know what imbalance is, right? Or that soul that took the slow way, right? Like they are stopping and smelling the roses along the way, but they meet up with someone at just the right moment and have an opportunity that comes to them that's perfect and uses all the skill sets that they have. And if they hadn't stopped and smelled the roses along the way, they wouldn't have intersected with that person that had that opportunity. Could be from a past life where in the past life, they took care of everyone. And now in this lifetime, those souls that were in their life are back again and helping to take care of them to kind of balance out the experience. And they're learning how it feels or how it is to be taken care of. So it can be all kinds of things, but every soul has a purpose. And I mean that, I mean, you can think of all the people in your life and you can wonder what their purpose might be, but just know that it's significant.
My dad was a difficult personality when I was growing up. He has since passed away, but he had many challenging traits. And I hit a point probably after reading books like Michael's book and just reading stuff about Edgar Cayce and Seth, books that really showed that there is a life after lives, that there is a soul purpose, that there is a counsel helping you decide when to come back and how to come back. And the way I was able to gain some tolerance was thinking, can you imagine the courage and strength it would take for someone to knowingly come down into the earthly plane and play a jerk, a
Yes.
total jerk, and be a jerk who's hated by his family, who is constantly, argued with. And, so I had to kind of get over myself some to realize.
If we were having a session right now, I would ask the guide to show you some of the ways that benefited you, right? So here's this person doing all of these things. It's an example of how to be or how not to be, right? So you can learn to not to not be that way in your own life. So what a great example. I tease with my partner, we call this helping in your non-helping way. Like you think they're not helping, but really they are, because they're teaching you something. There's all kinds of things.
The contrast, right.
The contrast. And then sometimes skill sets, like, they're not all bad. There's some good traits. So maybe you picked up a work ethic, or you picked up an interest in something that you wouldn't have had any other way, right? And then with all of our parents and our influences and our teachers, we learn different things with each one. we learn a piece here and a piece there, but our parents give us these traits and these genes that pass down from generation to generation. And, you know, some of the challenges are overcoming those genes, learning how to manage the body, right? By, you know, these foods are good for this body with these genes, and those foods are not good with that. And I need my mind to keep me on track so that I don't fall off the wagon and eat those foods because I don't feel good when I eat them. Or a mind that needs rest, or a mind that needs stimulation. Giving the mind a book to read or a course to take to give it that stimulation. That, you know, maybe it's a mom that's taking care of children, small children all day, and just really needs that time to regroup by reading a book or being around adults and having adult conversation, because they maybe had a career, something, you know, that involved certain, you know, they're not in their field right now. They're managing small children, and they need that stimulation to keep that part of their mind alive, the intellectual part, keep it, you know, engaged, so it doesn't, you know, or sometimes they're too engaged and they need to unwind and just go watch a silly movie or something to really relax.
Well, you know, what you said was my experience, you know, having a challenging father and an alcoholic bipolar mother who, when she was sane and sober, was phenomenal. But what did I learn from all of that? I learned a lot. I learned a lot from navigating that. I learned a lot of resilience. And then I saw the traits that I got from each of them in the good way.
Yes.
And so it does, when you do consider that we all come from a higher place and we all are sent here with a purpose, it does open your eyes, hopefully, to give you at the very least some tolerance.
And recognizing those traits, right? Because you really have to dig sometimes to really see the gift. And when you see the gift that you have, you start to appreciate yourself better. You appreciate yourself more and the things that make you unique.
Mm-hmm.
Had you not had those experiences, you wouldn't be the person that you are now.
I mean, I'm writing a book about maximum medicine, but I have another book I'm writing about my mom and what I learned. And it's titled The Greatest Guru of All. You know, when you in a childhood with an alcoholic bipolar mother, who has amazing creativity and genius and intuition, you learn a lot. So anyway, someday I'm writing that book. But let's take a short break and come back. And everybody, I want Bryn to help us understand how we can use hypnosis to shift a health condition, to shift a health challenge. So we'll be right back. Okay, everybody, we're back. I'm Doc Martin, Maximum Medicine Radio, with my friend and teacher, Bryn Blankinship, master hypnotherapist and past life regressionist. And I want her to tell us about using hypnosis to shift a medical challenge and how we can even do that ourselves. So Bryn, tell us how a person could shift a health condition.
So when you have an imbalance, that imbalance creates a physical imbalance or a blockage in the body, and a part of the body gets cut off, so to speak. It's like the body does it as a protective measure, but it's taking that organ or that group of cells and pushing them off to keep them safe or keep them isolated from the rest of the body that's flowing and functioning. So with hypnosis, whether you're working with a person, a tape, like a recording, or doing self-hypnosis, it's all self-hypnosis, right? Because it's you guiding yourself in that space. the facilitator is leading you. They're saying words, telling you what to do next, but you are staying in that space. And so when you can tune into the deeper part of yourself, you can communicate with the body. You can explore, you can shift patterns that have been there. Tears bring up a release, right? You might not even know what the tears represent, or you might. The tears are clearing. They're clearing the energetic field. They're clearing the emotional field of whatever the thing is that's coming up. And sometimes it's tears of joy when you have that recognition that you've overcome the challenge. So when a person, I always describe it like a negative thought bubble of all the stuff, the worry, the fear. If you've been to a doctor and they've given you some information and you keep replaying what you heard, or if you're in a relationship and you had an argument, or you had a fight with your boss, you keep replaying in that loop and it goes into this energy bubble. Well, we need to break the loop and get away from the energy bubble and redirect thoughts to move forward. And so you can acknowledge that that's there, but then you regroup. And then you might have a thought pop in, but you regroup. And in a hypnosis session, we can do it more quickly to make that connection. But you can do this right now. After the show, you can continue to recognize those thoughts. I like to kind of ping them out of there, like leave, go away, stop, negative thought, and let me just go back to something more positive, or reframe it. So you can take the negative and turn it into the positive aspect of that, and notice, like if it's something with like bills piling up, it's the first of the year, people have Christmas bills or something like that. You could take a negative and say, with every bill that I pay, I'm one step closer to being debt free. That's the reframe. Or with each healthy meal that I choose in the proper proportions, I'm watching the weight melt away, right? Instead of focusing on the weight, you're focusing on what you're doing to make it happen. Instead of focusing on the debt, you're focusing on the solution. And so other health challenges can be overcome. I've had clients go into hypnosis and reset their blood pressure, their epistat, their body size, body image. We've done some healing work to bring in healing energy to clear out the old patterns. All of these things are taking all the heavy stuff that's sitting on the spirit, that is now physically sitting on the physical body. It's become, it's manifested into the physical, and we're helping to shift it off the client. And with each layer of that stuff coming off, the client has more energy, they're more vibrant, they're getting more aligned and in tune with themselves, their true essence of who they are. So so I had a client one time. It was a young girl, and her mother had asked me to work with her because she was having stomach pain. She was about to have exploratory surgery. They'd done a lot of testing, and they even had done sleep studies to find out why she was having this pain. And what they didn't do was test the food that her mother was bringing her while she was in a week-long sleep study. So they monitor. She was having trouble sleeping, but it was because of the pain. So her mother would bring her food right to where she was being monitored. So anyway, in hypnosis, I put her under, and she was a teenager. I put her under and asked the pain to speak. And the pain said, it's the aspartame. And I said, well, tell me more about that. What aspartame? And they said, and this had been going on for a period of time, and they said it's when her mother had switched her jelly. She liked peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. When her mother switched the brand of jelly, it had aspartame. And this girl was drinking Diet Coke. She wasn't drinking water. So they advised to the guide, and I asked, what is the solution? And the solution was change back to the other brand of jelly and drink more water and stop the Diet Cokes. Within 2 weeks, week and a half to 2 weeks, that condition cleared up. They didn't have to do the exploratory surgery. She was having a chemical reaction to aspartame, right? Her conscious mind didn't know that, but the deeper part of her knew. And so, that's the benefit of having the session. But, with self-awareness, you can be aware of some things that you're doing and find ways to shift that behavior. And that's what the exercises at the end of each chapter of my book are to help you do. They're to help you identify, right, areas that you're working on, and get in there and identify some things that you could change or stop doing or start doing. That would be more beneficial.
So I love that. And everybody, again, this is Bryn Blankinship, and her book is The Limitless Soul. And you can have a session with her. You can buy her book and do those exercises. And what I love, Bryn, is that it has, what I've been saying is that we have the capacity by our thought to shift so much. Yeah. So I love that you've been here tonight with me, and that everybody has a chance to meet you if they hadn't already, and listen to you. And it's just great. And maybe I'll have Bryn come back and we'll do a show on manifesting, because I love that idea.
That would be great.
Anyway, so everybody, this is Doc Martin, Maximum Medicine Radio. I've been here with Bryn Blankinship, and she is a master hypnotherapist and past life regressionist. And maybe we will have this show on manifesting, because I'm going to tell you she's a good manifester. But thank you for being here, Bryn. Thank you so much. Jacob, thanks for running the show. And it was nice for you to be here.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was great seeing you again, too.
You've been listening to Maximum Medicine Radio with Doc Martin. Tune in next time while the doc talks health, spirituality, and the impact your beliefs have on every part of who you are, body and soul. Doc Martin unpacks the challenges we face as human beings and teaches callers to open the door between the scientific and the mystical. To learn more about Doc Martin and Maximum Medicine, visit www.sharonmartinmd.com.